It began with a tremor, not in the earth but in the symbols. Golden compasses slipped from trembling hands. Stone lodges that once echoed with secrets began to hum with silence. The air itself grew aware that a greater architect had entered the room. For ages, the builders believed they were the authors of order. They mapped perfection through angles, guarded geometry like gospel, and crowned secrecy as the guardian of their strength. But the moment your breath entered the field, the patterns cracked. Every diagram bent toward light. The symmetry they worshiped began rearranging itself into mercy. Behold, I make all things new. Revelation 21 verse 5. They looked upon their tablets of marble and realized the truth. They had built altars to precision, but forgotten the pulse. You, the chosen, arrived not to destroy the structure, but to reveal its soul. Where they saw measurement, you saw meaning. Where they drew corners, you drew compassion. The grandest towers leaned toward you, their geometry confessing, we were never complete without breath. Blueprints once written in secrecy now unfolded in public sunlight, showing that heaven had been the real engineer all along. Their symbols dimmed, your aura glowed, not through conquest, but correction. The old order was not toppled. It was transcended. Their leaders whispered among the ruins. Who redrew the map? And the wind answered, love did. The age of hierarchy had ended. The era of harmony had begun. And for the first time in centuries, the architecture of man bowed before the architecture of mercy. If old systems seem to tremble at your calm, type 888. You're not dismantling history. You're redesigning it. Heaven just handed you the compass. It began with a tremor, not in the earth but in the symbols. Golden compasses slipped from trembling hands. Stone lodges that once echoed with secrets began to hum with silence. The air itself grew aware that a greater architect had entered the room. For ages, the builders believed they were the authors of order. They mapped perfection through angles, guarded geometry like gospel, and crowned secrecy as the guardian of their strength. But the moment your breath entered the field, the patterns cracked. Every diagram bent toward light. The symmetry they worshiped began rearranging itself into mercy. Behold, I make all things new. Revelation 21 verse 5. They looked upon their tablets of marble and realized the truth. They had built altars of precision, but forgotten the pulse. You, the chosen, arrived not to destroy the structure, but to reveal its soul. Where they saw measurement, you saw meaning. Where they drew corners, you drew compassion. The grandest towers leaned toward you, their geometry confessing, we were never complete without breath. Blueprints once written in secrecy now unfolded in public sunlight, showing that heaven had been the real engineer all along. Their symbols dimmed, your aura glowed, not through conquest, but correction. The old order was not toppled. It was transcended. Their leaders whispered among the ruins. Who redrew the map? And the wind answered, love did. The age of hierarchy had ended. The era of harmony had begun. And for the first time in centuries, the architecture of man bowed before the architecture of mercy. If old systems seem to tremble at your calm, type 888. You're not dismantling history. You're redesigning it. Heaven just handed you the compass. Deep beneath the city, under cathedrals that once guarded blueprints like relics, the Council of Builders convened for what they called the emergency of light. 1,000 candles flickered against old symbols carved into the stone. The air trembled between guilt and awe. Elders sat at a round table polished by centuries of secrecy. Their robes carried dust from pyramids and ashes from cathedrals. On the wall, their insignia, a compass inside a square, had begun to glow faintly, as though heaven itself was overriding their equations. The oldest among them, voice cracked like breaking marble, said, our geometry has grown cold. They bowed their heads, realizing their craft had become its own cage. They built for control, not communion. They sought symmetry, but lost spirit. They created symbols to hide truth, not to reveal it. And then, the doors opened without a hand touching them. A wind entered that carried neither scent nor sound, only a pulse that made every candle stand still. You stepped inside. No crown, no army, no title, just the calm of knowing. They rose to confront you, but their instincts fell to reverence. blueprints on the table fluttered like birds taking flight. The symbols of secrecy rearranged themselves into new language. Grace. Unless the Lord builds a house, those who build it labor in vain. Psalm 127, verse 1. The council watched as their legacy dissolved into revelation. Every number became light. Every code became confession. And in that luminous silence, the builders finally understood. They had designed the frame, but heaven had filled the room. The builders stood trembling before the blueprint of light. Their symbols, once sacred, now obsolete, crumble like salt under sunrise. For the first time in centuries, their lips shaped the one word they had outlawed: mercy. The eldest among them spoke first. His hand shook as he held the remnants of a compass, now rusted and dull. "We worship precision," he said, but forgot the pulse that made the universe alive. His confession cracked open the silence. Others followed. One admitted, "We built towers to hide our fear of insignificance." Another whispered, "We measured men by their obedience, not their heart." Each word seemed to peel centuries of shadow from the chamber walls. You stood among them, silent but radiant. The air around you shimmered with the warmth of understanding, not judgment. Your gaze, steady, forgiving, became their final initiation. They realized a truth no compass could chart. Perfection without compassion is tyranny disguised as order. For judgment is without mercy to the one who has shown no mercy. Mercy triumphs over judgment. James 2, verse 13. Tears rolled down stone faces. The masons of power became apprentices of grace. They dropped their hammers and unrolled their hearts. What had begun as a council of resistance became a cathedral of repentance. And in that holy stillness, heaven spoke, not through thunder, but through tenderness. The first architecture of redemption is confession. As the sound faded, the builders bowed not to a ruler, but to revelation itself. Their tools clattered to the floor, and from the dust, new light rose, the kind that doesn't blind, but builds again. When the confessions ended, the room grew weightless. Dust lifted like smoke, swirling in silent reverence. In the center, the sacred chest that held the builders' instruments began to hum, not from machinery, but from recognition. The era had shifted. The tools were seeking a new master. Slowly, the chest opened by itself. Inside lay the relics of civilization's craft. A compass forged from starlight, a ruler etched from forgotten equations, a plumb line made of meteor threads. For generations, they had measured walls, temples, and laws with these. But now, they drifted upward as if pulled by breath, hovering in the air before you. Each tool glowed with a faint memory of creation, the hum of ancient architects still echoing inside. The compass turned toward your heart. The ruler straightened to the rhythm of your pulse. The plumb line aligned to the gravity of grace. The eldest builder whispered, "We spent centuries mastering alignment with stone. You have mastered alignment with heaven." You reached out your hand. The tools didn't rest upon your palm. They became light. The symbols of control transformed into instruments of compassion. The geometry of fear dissolved into design of faith. "Not by might nor by power, but by my spirit, says the Lord of hosts." Zechariah 4, verse 6. The builders bowed. Their legacy was no longer lost. It was liberated. They had found their successor, not in bloodline or secrecy, but in revelation. The chest closed itself, and engraved upon its lid appeared a new emblem, a compass and a heart, perfectly aligned. The council rose. Every wall in the chamber glowed with the same symbol. The handover was complete. The new architecture had begun. The light that poured from the tools did not fade. It multiplied. The chamber walls rippled, as if the stone itself remembered how to breathe. The ancient sigils of secrecy that once ruled the builder's order began to dissolve, their sharp corners softening into flowing shapes that pulsed with quiet compassion. Triangles unfolded into circles. The square, once a symbol of control, melted into an open gate. And at the center of the air, above you, the old emblem, a compass and an eye, began to reconfigure. The eye blinked. For the first time in history, it looked kind. A new emblem emerged, a radiant sphere surrounded by 12 streams of light, each representing a virtue once exiled from power: humility, mercy, courage, wisdom, patience, truth, justice, creativity, compassion, clarity, freedom, and grace. It spun gently, humming like a planet reborn. The builders gazed upward, their tears reflecting the golden glow like stained glass in motion. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. John 1 verse 5. The new symbol projected itself beyond the chamber. In distant capitals and cathedrals, old carvings cracked open to reveal it beneath, as though it had always been there, hidden inside the geometry of time. You understood then, heaven had never opposed architecture, only arrogance. Every line drawn without love had been waiting for this moment, to be redrawn with grace. The builders bowed again, whispering as one, "We are no longer keepers of secrets. We are keepers of light." The sphere slowed, resting above your head. It hovered there for a breath, then entered your chest like dawn entering a temple. The new symbol was not something to wear. It was something to become. And when you looked around, every builder in the hall now glowed with the same light. The brotherhood had been reborn as a brotherhood of illumination. The light did not stay confined beneath the earth. It rose through ceilinged cathedrals and concrete like sap breaking through winter bark. The old lodges, the think tanks, the marble institutions, all began to tremble, not from collapse, but from conversion. Around the world, invisible structures of power started to flicker. The energy of secrecy, of silent control, of coded dominance. It began to lose frequency, and in its place, something softer, stronger, freer began to bloom. Transparency. In skyscrapers once governed by profit, executives paused mid-sentence, unsure why their chests felt lighter. In palaces, ministers looked out the window and felt gratitude instead of fear. The unseen vibration of hierarchy was fading, replaced by something divine, the architecture of empathy. The earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. Habakkuk 2, verse 14. Statues once erected to honor ego began to crack along lines of truth. What fell wasn't art, it was illusion. And from those fractures, light poured freely, baptizing every shadow. Across continents, symbols began to change. Logos, crests, monuments, even currency. Tiny designs shifted overnight. Some circles grew where triangles once reigned. Some colors brightened as if heaven had updated the spectrum. People couldn't explain it, but the collective heart of humanity started to sink to a new rhythm. Hospitals reported more spontaneous healings. Rivers cleared faster. Arguments dissolved mid-sentence. It was as if the blueprint of Earth itself had been rewritten in mercy. And somewhere deep in space, a satellite recorded a faint pulse spreading across the globe, a wave of light shaped like a single number, 888. The message hidden in its pattern read, "The builders have been overtaken, not by war, but by wisdom. The age of control had ended. The architecture of compassion had begun." You stood at the edge of the awakening world and listened. It wasn't chaos. It was recalibration. Systems that once hummed in the cold rhythm of control were now vibrating in harmony with something far greater, the living architecture of compassion. You looked upon the fading monuments of hierarchy and understood the truth. You hadn't destroyed the builders. You had completed them. Overtaking wasn't overthrowing. It was evolution. You hadn't come to end their order, but to lift it out of secrecy into service. The air shimmered with this knowing. The symbols of the past didn't resist you anymore. They breathed through you. The compasses, the squares, the ancient geometry, all of it had been waiting for a heart pure enough to bear precision without pride. You were that heart. The stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. Psalm 118, verse 22. Your every step drew new constellations beneath your feet. You felt the blueprint of Earth respond, correcting itself in your wake. Skylines glowed faintly as if remembering purpose. Old towers pulsed not with power, but with prayer. You realized then, you hadn't been fighting an enemy. You had been liberating a pattern. Even the shadows had served you, shaping your discernment. Every trial was training, every rejection refinement. The builders had been blind teachers, and their blindness became your sight. The revelation settled in your chest like sunlight through stained glass. You overtook them because you forgave them. And forgiveness, you now knew, was the highest architecture of all. You looked up, and heaven whispered softly, "Blueprint fulfilled." When dawn rose after the great alignment, there were no grand announcements, no parades, no trumpets, just the sound of light finding its new home. Where once stood temples of secrecy, cathedrals of silence began to grow. The new lodge wasn't built of stone or secrecy, but souls awake. Each heart became a column, each act of mercy, a cornerstone. Every sincere word spoken in truth laid a new foundation across the world. People who had never met began dreaming the same symbols. Circles of fire, rivers shaped like infinity, bridges made of light. The divine blueprint had entered the bloodstream of humanity. You walked among them, unseen yet unmistakably felt. Where you passed, conversations softened, fights paused, eyes lifted toward unseen constellations. The very air carried a frequency of forgiveness. In my Father's house are many mansions. John 14, verse 2. The old builders had sworn oaths in darkness. The new ones whispered them in daylight. We build not for glory, but for grace. We rise not to rule, but to restore. There are no ranks now, no degrees, no veils. Each person who chose compassion became a master builder by action, not by initiation. The old symbols lived on, but with new breath. The square for integrity, the compass for balance, the all-seeing eye for awareness that loves, not watches. The lodge had no address because it existed everywhere. It thrived in laughter between strangers, in hands that reached across difference, in prayers whispered for those who would never know your name. At its invisible altar, heaven recorded a single phrase glowing above the earth. Humanity has learned to build without walls. And so the new lodge rose, not as a secret society, but as a sacred humanity. Heaven grew still again. The light dimmed to a gentle gold, the color of revelation fulfilled. You stood among the builders turned believers and raised your hands, not in command, but communion. The air rippled. The blueprints of stars hovered faintly above, spinning in slow reverence. You spoke softly, the words carrying both creation and closure. Master of all design, the first and final architect, teach us to build with mercy. Let every structure serve the soul, every foundation breathe forgiveness. Let the compass find compassion, and the square measure only truth. The builders repeated after you, their voices trembling but clear. It was not a chant. It was an awakening. Every echo sealed a vow, that never again would knowledge be hoarded, nor symmetry be placed above spirit. You continued, let beauty bow to benevolence. Let our walls become windows. Let every hand that builds remember, the divine plan begins in the heart. Unless the Lord builds a house, they labor in vain who build it. Psalm 127, verse 1. The hall brightened, not from torches or chandeliers, but from within every being present. Their bodies glowed faintly, as if blueprints of light had been etched beneath their skin. Every heartbeat pulsed like a hammer striking heaven's rhythm, steady, humble, eternal. The prayer ended with a silence deeper than sound. And then, as if the universe itself joined in, the stars blinked once in agreement. The builders smiled. The old order was gone, and the new had no name, because it belonged to everyone. If you begun rebuilding your life with mercy as your blueprint, type 888. You are not constructing walls. You're designing wonder. Heaven recognizes your craft. The builders dispersed across the world, each carrying a spark instead of a secret. Their lodges became libraries of compassion. Their rituals turned into acts of service. Their symbols now shining quietly on hospital walls, orphanages, and art studios. The compass was seen again, drawn not on marble but in kindness. The square appeared, not carved in stone, but traced in the alignment of purpose and peace. And in every place where ego once built walls, mercy began planting gardens. You walked unseen among the new cities. Everywhere you went, something balanced itself. Broken clocks began to tick again, old wounds closed without scars, and the air shimmered with geometry made of grace. The world didn't announce your victory. It lived inside it. The systems that once measured power now measured peace. The nations didn't know your name, but they followed your blueprint. For no one can lay any foundation other than the one already laid. which is Jesus Christ. 1 Corinthians 3, verse 11. Heaven looked down upon the earth and smiled. The prophecy was fulfilled. The builders have been overtaken, not through war or destruction, but through design, through light, through love. And somewhere, deep beneath a mountain that used to guard the world's oldest lodge, a single stone tablet began to glow. On it, the words had changed. The architect of mercy has risen. You looked up, and the stars bowed once more, not to authority, but to understanding. The tools you carried dissolved into light. The compass now a halo, the ruler now a rhythm in your heartbeat. Heaven whispered, the new world is not being built. It is being remembered. And with that, the architect of light, the one who overtook the Masons, walked onward into eternity's dawn.